Here to tell us more about this is Fedor Meerts, Department Head, Integrity and Gambling at the Ministry of Justice and Security. Welcome, Fedor. Please make it to the stage, and we are very eager to hear what you have to say today. Welcome.
Thanks. Thank you, Willem. And I'll get back to the point on December. I really wonder where December comes from, but that's something that I'll clarify later in my speech. It was very interesting to also hear the conversation here before, a conversation, of course, we've been hearing and having as well at the ministry. I think it's good for me to just give you a policy update to say where we stand at the moment. We're currently in between governments, as was reflected in the presentation before. So it's quite uncertain for us what will be the priorities for the next government. However, I, of course, can give you the current perspective from the Ministry of Justice, and that's a perspective in which consumer protection and the prevention of gambling addiction are and remain key policy goals. So one thing we do know, and that's what was discussed quite extensively in the previous discussion, are the plans of the incoming government to raise the gambling tax from 30.5% to almost 38%, which is a very sharp increase that, as also René mentioned in his speech this morning, I am told, gives cause for concern about the effects for the different gambling markets. The policy objectives of consumer protection, of preventing gambling addiction, and of tackling illegality and crime are best served by economically viable but also strictly regulated markets. And I'm well aware that already at the moment we have one of the highest tax rates in the Netherlands, and with the tax increase to almost 38%, for some it may not be viable to operate in the Netherlands anymore. We are at the moment unclear on how this will be in the, of course, in the new tax plans, which still have to be drafted after the new government is installed. But of course, we will continue to advise on the effects on gambling policy. Other political developments recently, of course, were the parliamentary motions that we've seen. I heard 10, actually we had 12 which were adopted already this year, 10 in the recent round and 2 in a round before, regarding various topics. And some very political and very far-ranging, other ones slightly more practical. But they include everything from implementing a single customer review for playing limits. Of course, we had the session also with, amongst others, Peter Paul on that, to strengthen the instruments of the Gambling Authority, to ban certain online games of chance with a very high risk that Eric just referred to as well, to ban all online advertising for online gambling, and also to establish a protocol for contacts with industry. The current Minister for Legal Protection has yet to provide Parliament with a response to his adopted motions. Many of these motions have very far-reaching consequences, and it's clear that further research is needed, amongst others, to see how they impact the policy goals, whether they're proportionate, and if they're in line, of course, with especially EU law. Therefore, the Minister for Legal Protection had advised Parliament against adopting quite a number of them. Important in this regard is, of course, also the evaluation of the Remote Gambling Act, which is still expected to be concluded and published in October this year. I don't know if you saw, but this week a study was published which is not part of the evaluation, but is very important also for the evaluation, specifically on gambling trends and the prevalence of at-risk and problematic gambling behavior in the Netherlands. Some main takeaways, some data at least. There's a lack of data, we heard in the previous discussions, but we are gathering much more data over the last years, luckily. Is that over the whole market, 3% of gamblers meet the criteria of being moderate risk gamblers and 2 high risk. This, of course, also includes partaking in lotteries. What is interesting but not surprising to see is that young adults and persons with non-Western migration backgrounds seem to be more at risk. They're higher percentages. These outcomes, by the way, are quite similar to the baseline research that was done in 2021. Specific for online gambling, the researchers conclude that 70% of respondents who are now gambling started after the opening of the market, which is quite similar to figures by the Gambling Authority, but quite a lot higher than other recent research done by INO Ipsos. 75% of respondents state that they only play on legal websites, and 22% do not know whether they are actually playing on a legal or an illegal website. For the ministry, this study represents a new standard for monitoring gambling trends and the prevalence of at-risk and problematic gambling in the Netherlands. To build up data over time, we will periodically repeat this research. The results of this study for me, underline also the importance that we remain vigilant when it comes to preventing specific vulnerable groups, in particular young adults, and that we take necessary measures to protect them. So René already talked about one of these measures that the Gambling Authority has taken regarding the duty of care by their new policy rules. I think that's a big step forward in that sense. In February, the Minister for Legal Protection also gave into consultation measures which are complementary to that, specifically focusing on player limits and player insight into their gambling behavior. So this new proposed legislation sets new technical requirements for displaying player profiles to ensure that they're not encouraged to set high limits and to further inform players about the risks of gambling. It also includes a mandatory conversation when someone sets high limits. And finally, it contains obligations to inform players on their player behavior, especially in relation to the limits that they have set themselves. We have received valuable input during the consultation from a wide range of stakeholders and also from the Dutch Advisory Board on Regulatory Burden. We assess that while the proposed legislation does impose additional requirements on license holders, it is both necessary and proportionate to improve the protection of players. So I can already say here, do not expect major changes to the version that was consulted on. We're currently in the process of obtaining ministerial approval for this publication, so here comes the point. And we aim to publish on the 1st of July and to enter into force 1st of October, as was originally planned. So finally, closing remarks. And coming back to what I said in the beginning, it is key to keep broadening and deepening the knowledge base on gambling in the Netherlands, to have a discussion based on facts and not on emotions, as we saw in the previous panel. And so that we take informed policy decisions and update legislation where actually needed. In this light, I'm also glad to be able to say that the Trimmers Institute will, provided we get all the paperwork done in time, this summer launch an expertise center on gambling. And I think after the launch of the research program on the prevention of gambling addiction by Zondenwee in 2022, this is an important next step, focusing on bringing together and disseminating knowledge for researchers, for healthcare professionals, for prevention workers, at operators, and of course also for those who design the policies and rules at the Ministry and at the Gambling Authority. So this concludes my policy update, brief as we agreed.
Can I ask you to take a seat?
Yeah, of course.
As I said, thank you, Fedor, for clarifying this. I think you've given us a broad outline of what to expect. And we thought it would be nice to have an industry insider question you a bit more about what you've just shared. So we're here with Eric Konings, Policy Advisor at the Netherlands Online Gambling Association, NOGA. Eric, to ask a few questions to you, Fedor. Thank you very much.
Hi, Fedor. Nice to meet you. Are you enjoying yourself here?
Of course, of course. Yeah? Sadly, I had to miss the morning program, but so far very interesting, the afternoon.
René can tell you all about it. He was here. And, just a few questions for you. If there's any questions from the audience, we'll get there. Just a few questions for you, starting off easily. Yeah. We have the Euros coming up. If you had a tenner, who would you bet on? And more importantly, at what operator would you bet?
Oof, the last I'm not going to answer, but
why
who
not?
would
No.
I don't think we should have a partial position on that. No. Who would I bet on for the Euros? I think
Brazil.
No, that would be not a. I think the French actually.
Yeah, good one. Good safe bet, I guess. Hey, we heard René this morning. He was referring to the letter that the KSA sent out about to the license holders, saying, "Hey, don't cut corners, don't push the boundaries, etc." Yeah. This year, the Euros are in Germany. In 4 years' time, they will be in the UK. In 4 years' time, will there still be license holders a letter can be sent to?
I hope so. Yes.
But we're talking a bit about the political and societal sentiment towards gaming. Yeah. Do you sometimes worry that the license system as such is falling down or will not survive?
Well, what I worry about is that there's a lot of pressure to take decisions. And I think what is most important is that we do that on the basis of information. And as far as the information that we have goes, we are best served with a legal market that functions well. Yeah. I think there have been excesses. I think there have been quite some interventions from both us and from the gambling authority aimed at curbing these excesses. But I think that's what they should be focused on, to make sure that there's no excess. Yeah. But we firmly believe in having a legal market. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So the new policy rules are in place. Do they serve the policy objectives?
Which policy rules you mean?
The core 3 policy objectives of consumer protection, prevention of fraud, criminality.
Yeah. But which
the RG policy rules that have been published by KSA this week or June.
Well, I think it would not be proper for me to review that. But I think from what I see, is the measures are primarily aimed, of course, on 2 policy goals: consumer protection, but particularly also preventing excess loss and risk of addiction. And in that sense, I think they're very, very welcome additions, especially also the, I think, much debated addition of the check, the financial check at €700.
Yeah, for sure. Another development that is talked about a lot, of course, is the overarching limits. And as far as I'm informed, the ministry is doing a sort of research into it, because initially the minister reported technical and legal issues around it. Why do you think the Netherlands will be the market that that makes it work? Why do you think that do you think that in the Netherlands we will be like the first market where we will actually make it work?
Ooh, no, I don't have a crystal ball.
Am I making you uncomfortable? It's not my intention.
No, but I don't have a crystal ball. I think the idea of player limits and of single customer view when it comes to how much money you spend at legal operators makes perfect sense. Because if you have a general commitment to protecting a consumer, it should be possible to do it over the entire market. So I think as a principle, it could definitely work. I think the proof of the pudding is, of course, in the eating. So you have to see how to do it. And I heard some examples also in one of the previous sessions of how it has been implemented in Germany. Yeah. We, at the moment, are looking very broadly at the options for this. And that's anything, as already also has been sent by my minister to Parliament, anything from basically what Parliament has requested, which is basically a hard limit. That's it. If you want to continue playing, you cannot, or you have to go to a legal market. That's of course one of the options. But there's anything from there to basically the system that we have now, with a conversation at a certain point, and anything in between that. So there's many different ways in which you can do that, and I think we should always keep in the back of our heads what is actually going to protect the consumer, and what's actually going to make sure that there is not a sharp rise in illegal activity. Yeah.
And how do you then look at, for instance, Germany, that was given as an example, where it went a bit the wrong way because the channelization dropped. So in that respect, consumer protection wasn't really helped or served. What are the lessons you then, I mean, if you can't really answer that specifically, that's fine, of course, but what are the lessons you try to learn from that to avoid that would happen in the Netherlands as well?
Well, I think at least 2 lessons. First of all, you need to really, before you do anything, have a clear view of what the impact will be. I think also in Germany it's very difficult to compare to the Netherlands because they have a very different system with all the different competent authorities in the different Länder. And the channelization rate was, of course, very different from what we have now in the Netherlands already from a start.
Yeah.
So I think it's a different situation. So that's something you have to assess. And you have to make sure that what you do is necessary and proportionate. So don't do anything which might sound nice, but is not necessary or not proportionate.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Conscious of time, I know Willem is sharp on the clock always.